This is the Next Tape Podcast, episode 102 with Mikel and
Tanyka.
where we have conversation on different topics. So, uh, today we're going to have a episode on a special topic. Can you present that to us, Tanika?
Yeah. We are going to be talking about the sixth member of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, that being Lou Pearlman, which I think
Sixth member?
we're going
Well,
to talk about it. Do you know the story of
so
Lou
they're
Pearlman?
combative?
No. That is not what I'm talking about. For my true crime people, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that we're going to be getting into. And I think it's going to be new for Mikel. I don't think he knows the story.
Oh, it was a story back in the day, was it?
Yeah, not fully back in the day, because what does that even mean? It's first of all, Backstreet Boys and NSYNC are not that old. Okay, calm down. Um, and Backstreet Boys are still together. You know that, right? They never broke up.
I know they're still together.
Okay.
The thing is that like I never knew there was gonna be a sixth member.
There technically is not a sixth. There technically is sixth member. You know what? We're just gonna talk about it.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Let's get to it.
We'll make that make sense for you. Okay. So, Louis J. Pearlman, who was born on June 19th, 1954, and who would later die on August 19th, 2016, was an American music manager and a scam artist. He was the person behind many successful 1990s boy bands, having formed and funded the Backstreet Boys. After their massive success, he then developed NSYNC. And others. There's others. O-Town, I think, is another one that he was a part of. So in 2006, so going forward a little bit, he was accused of running one of the largest and longest running Ponzi schemes in United States history, leaving more than $300 million in debt. After attempting to evade capture, Pearlman was apprehended in Bali, Indonesia, in June of 2007. He would plead guilty to conspiracy, money laundering, and making false statements during bankruptcy proceedings. In 2008, Pearlman was convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison, where he would die in federal custody in 2016. So let's go into his early life. Who was Lou Pearlman? So Lou Pearlman was born and raised in Queens, New York, the only child of Jewish parents, Hy Pearlman, who ran a dry cleaning business, and Rainey Pearlman, who was a school lunchroom aide. He was a first cousin of, or he claimed, I should say, to be the first cousin of musician Art Garfunkel. Pearlman's home at Mitchell Gardens Apartments was located across from Flushing Airport, where he and childhood friend Alan Gross would watch blimps take off and land. Remember blimps?
Yeah.
Yeah. For people younger than 20, 30, whatever, blimps were these things that moved really slow in the sky. They basically look like hot air balloons, but not quite. We don't see blimps anymore, but blimps were always fun to see in the sky sometimes. According to his autobiography, Brands, and Billions, it was during this period that he used his position on his school paper to earn credentials and get his first ride in a blimp. This is disputed by Gross, though, who claims he was the school reporter and allowed Pearlman to take along. So that's just the one look into Pearlman's lies. Garfunkel's fame and wealth helped inspire Pearlman's own interest in the music business. As a teenager, he managed a band, but when success in music proved elusive, he turned his attention to aviation. During his first year as a student at Queens College, Perlman wrote a business plan for a class project based on the idea of a helicopter taxi service in New York City, which sounds really cool. Sounds like a good idea.
Mhm.
By the late 1970s, he had launched the business based on his business plan, starting with one helicopter. He then persuaded German businessman Theodor, I think it's Theodore or Theodore, oh boy, Willenkemper, a Luftwaffe veteran, to train him on blimps and subsequently spent some time at, I gotta say the name again, Willenkemper's facilities in West Germany learning about the airships. So that's kind of where this, yeah. So now we're going to dive more into his suspicions of insurance fraud and all of that jazz.
So he was like the supposed sixth member, but he got into like, like troubles
So he
I suppose.
technically, so before he was, like, we'll kind of get, I don't know if we'll get into it properly here, but if we don't, I'll explain more. But he was doing his blimp thing prior to being a part of the music industry. So that came first. And he kind of was doing these Ponzi schemes by having people invest into the company,
Yes. S-
right? Um, so because he would kind of show off as being this rich person, which maybe at one point he was,
mm,
that's where a lot of the schemes were coming in within the boy bands. So we'll get to it. Hopefully. If not, I will do it because I've watched enough of this man to kind of
mm,
fill in the gaps if I need to. So, returning to the US, Perlman formed Airship Enterprises Limited, which leased a blimp to Jordosh, I think, before actually owning one. He used the funds from Jordosh to construct a blimp, which promptly crashed. The two parties sued each other, and 7 years later, Perlman was awarded $2.5 million in damages, which is a lot of money even now. On the advice of a friend, Perlman started a new company, Airship International, taking it public to raise the $3 million that he needed to purchase a blimp, falsely claiming that he had a partnership with Wallenkemper.
mm,
He leased the blimp to McDonald's for advertising.
mm,
Perlman then relocated Airship International to Orlando, Florida in July of 1991, where he signed MetLife and SeaWorld as clients for his blimps to advertise. Because that's what people did. People used blimps to advertise their business back in the day. Um, Airship International suffered when one of its clients left and three of the aircraft crashed, which can I just point out here, in case people are kind of missing this? I would not be surprised, or I'm sure there's probably some proof out there that he was most likely crashing his blimps on purpose in order to file insurance claims and get the money from the claims, which is insurance fraud.
mm,
Um, the company's stock, which had once been pumped up to $6 a share, dropped to a price of 3 cents a share, which is really bad, and the company was shut down. After he took the company public in 1985, Perlman became personally and professionally close to Jerome Rosen, a partner at a small cap trading firm called Norbay Securities. Based in Bayside, Queens, and frequently in trouble with regulators, Norbay actively traded airship stock. This set airship's stock price consistently higher, enabling Perlman to sell hundreds of thousands of shares and warrants at ever higher prices. However, Airship was reporting little revenue, cash flow, or net income, which is tax fraud. In return for keeping his penny stock liquid, Perlman allegedly paid Rosen handsome commissions, according to a mutual friend, that reached into the tens of thousands of dollars per trade. I mean, yeah. So now let's move into the entertainment industry now, where that's starting to come in. Perlman became fascinated with the success of the New Kids on the Block, who had made hundreds of millions of dollars in record, tour, and merchandise sales. He started Transcontinental Records in early 1992 with the intent of mimicking their boy band business model. The record label's first band, the Backstreet Boys, consisted of five unknown performers and selected by Perlman in a $3 million talent search. Management duties were assigned to a former New Kids on the Block manager, Johnny Wright, and his wife, Donna, which I wonder if Donna is the same woman on the documentary, because Netflix had a documentary on this recently, who was just to this day just being like, well, Lou is a great guy. Lou didn't do anything wrong. You can be stupid, but don't be naive. But um, the Backstreet Boys became the biggest selling boy band of all time with record sales of $130 million. Fun fact, they actually weren't fully received in the States initially. They actually went into Europe because they were very popular in Europe initially. So even though like Backstreet Boys have been around forever, like they just didn't have the same pull in the States as they did abroad. So that I thought that was actually really interesting, that part of it. But um, so they would be hitting gold, platinum, and diamond in 45 countries. Perlman and the Wrights were then introduced to NSYNC, which was formed by Chris Kirkpatrick, not Justin, just saying. But Chris Kirkpatrick, who's just like the one person that people tend to forget exists. But Perlman and the Wrights funded and managed NSYNC in a very similar fashion, selling over 70 million records globally. Yeah. With these two major successes under his belt, Perlman became a music mogul. Other boy bands managed by Perlman were O-Town. Do you remember O-Town?
Old Town. I do remember Old Town.
Yeah. So they
Yeah.
are Lou Pearlman's group as well, O-Town.
Hmm.
So they were created during the ABC MTV reality television series Making the Band. He also had LFO, Take Five, Natural, Martian Dillon, who was co-created with country music artist Kenny Rogers, and US5, as well as the girl groups Solid, Harmony, and Innocence, co-managed with Lynn Harless, who is the mother of NSYNC band member Justin Timberlake. So that I didn't know, but he was very heavily involved in like the boy band girl group scene in the 90s. Other artists on the Transcontinental label included Aaron Carter, Jordan Knight, who was a part of New Kids on the Block, Smiles and South Star, and C Note.
Hmm.
Perlman also owned the Church Street Station Entertainment Complex in Orlando, including a recording studio he called Transcontinental Studios and a dance studio near Disney World named O-Town. So, original. In 2002, Perlman and Wes Smith co-wrote Bands and Billions, My Top 10 Rules for Making Any Business Go Platinum. With the exceptions of US5 and Marshall Dillon, all of the musical acts that worked with Perlman sued him in federal court for misrepresentation and fraud. So here's what I'll do. I'll fill in the gap here. Um, so what would later be realized is number one, he was not paying them for their music. He wasn't paying them whatsoever. Um, I think it was Joey Fatone.
Hmm.
He mentioned, or Lance Bass, and one of the two, they mentioned um, that the very first check that they got, and I don't know which song it would have been for, but the first check they ever got,
Hmm.
which took a long time to get, was $10,000 to be split among the five. Not just each person gets 10K. It's $10,000 for them to split among each other. They weren't getting anything else. They they would kind of get these excuses of, well, I pay for your boarding, I pay for your
Mhm.
food, I do all of that. So like that's was his excuse. But like they to think about the fact that Backstreet Boys were number one, which they went through different things and what NSYNC went through. They're away from families.
Mhm.
They're in Europe for months upon months because that's where they were popular initially. And they're getting paid nothing, basically. So just imagine like these groups who we as consumers loved and listened to were not being paid for their music or being paid for, what they deserve. And then the other thing was that they would later find out, all of the groups really, but really they really focused on obviously Backstreet Boys and NSYNC because they were his most successful. Um, they would find out that in the contract between them and Pearlman, he included himself as the sixth member of the group. So they didn't know this. So with him being the sixth member of the group, he would basically be double dipping. He would be
Mhm.
getting money as their manager, which is obviously he'd be entitled to, but he would also be then getting paid as a member of the group, which that's where the problem lies. Problem is he's paying himself as a member, but not paying them.
Mhm.
So that's where the whole like sixth member thing comes in because he was like a silent sixth member and no one knew. Um, so that's where the problem was.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That that's why because of those troubles,
Sorry, what are you asking?
that's why they never like actually, confirm them as like the true sixth member or
Well, no, that's normally how things would not work that way. It's not typical to see a manager include himself as the
this.
other member of a group. That's
Oh,
not how it works.
yeah.
You're
I
doing a
see that. I see no.
contract.
Well, it's been happening a lot in the back then. Like managers want to be part of like the group. Like you
No, no,
see,
no. Let me rephrase.
yeah,
You shouldn't be doing that. I don't care if
yeah. I
people are
know.
doing that. You shouldn't be doing it. It's
You
it's
shouldn't be doing it,
it's
but here,
unethical. It's not
yeah,
illegal, but it's
yeah,
unethical.
yeah.
And what's worse in this instance is he's paying himself, but he is not paying them. I don't know what those
Oh,
other cases are doing, but he is not paying them, or at least not paying them what they should be getting.
wow.
Um,
Mm.
and
So,
you also should have been disclosing it. He didn't disclose it.
hmm,
He's just doing, and you're dealing with ultimately children. The oldest person in the group was Chris Kirkpatrick, in NSYNC, anyways.
mhm.
But with both Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, you're dealing with teenagers.
I don't
Justin was the
understand.
youngest.
Yeah. Hmm.
He was like 15, 16, I think,
Yeah.
when NSYNC started.
Hmm.
Um, Now Backstreet Boys were a little bit older, but they were still teenagers.
Yeah, they didn't. Well, for kids, I
Lawyers
just
should have
don't.
been involved, but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. For kids, I don't understand finance at that age. Yeah.
Not even just finances, it goes beyond financing.
Mhm.
It's more about um contract. If
Yeah,
you don't
too.
have that basic, honestly, in my honest opinion, is the first and foremost in this case, they're signing contracts without realizing that is a part of the contract.
Hmm.
And once you have, because that's why they always say sign everything, or no, sorry, read everything before you sign it. But who reads a contract, really? Especially when you're dealing with young kids. Let's be real, they were kids. Um, they are not going to sign them. They're going to trust the person that they're signing the stuff with. And it happens all the time in the music industry, to what you were saying, where people are not reading the contracts properly and seeing what's in that contract. I mean, Barry Gordy did the same thing with Motown. People never realized that he not only owned your music, but he owned the group name. That's why, like, when Jackson 5 moved on, they couldn't use the name Jackson 5 anymore because Motown owned it. They had to change their name to Jacksons instead. That's an example. So people don't read contracts in the music industry, and there is a lot of underhanded nonsense. But there's so much more with him too that I will get to. Again, I will fill in the gaps. But it's it's very weird. It's a very weird thing to do, and it's unethical in my honest opinion. Um Anyway, the members of Backstreet Boys were the first to file a lawsuit against Perlman, feeling that their contract, under which Perlman collected as both manager and producer, so not just the member, but manager and producer, was unfair because Perlman was also paid as a sixth member of the Backstreet Boys, example, 1/6 of the band's own income. The band's dissatisfaction began when member Brian Littrell hired a lawyer to determine why the group had received only $300,000 for all of their work. So I guess from the very beginning, not sure. While Perlman and his record label had made millions. Fellow boy band NSYNC was having similar issues with Perlman, and its members soon followed suit. At the age of 14, Aaron Carter filed a lawsuit in 2002 that accused Perlman and Transcontinental of cheating him out of hundreds of thousands of dollars and of racketeering in a deliberate pattern of criminal activity. This suit was later settled out of court. So now we're going to move into, I guess there was also a talent scouting scandal with him as well. Say that 5 times fast. In September 2002, Perlman purchased Mark Tollner's internet-based talent company, Options Talent Group, formerly Model and Studio 58, which would subsequently go through several names, including Transcontinental Talent, Willa Himena Talent Scouting, Web Style Network, Fashion Rock, and Talent Rock. Regardless of the name, all incarnations were based on the business model used by Omodel founder Yamin Alec Differy, himself a convicted con artist, so great, who played a principal role in running Options TCT and WSN and setting up Fashion Rock. The companies received unfavorable press attention, ranging from questions about their business practices to outright declarations that they were scams. After Hot Jobs and Monster.com pulled over 1,000 of the company's job ads from their boards, they were fully further advertised on the Diffwai founded industry magazine website. The Better Business Bureau's opinion about Options TCT WSN was negative, citing a pattern of complaints concerning misrepresentation and selling practices. The New York State Consumer Protection Board issued an alert naming it the largest example they had found of a photo mill scam, which not sure what that means, but it's a scam. California Department of Industrial Relations Division of Labor Standards Enforcement, also called California Labor Commission's Office, declared Options DCTWSN in violation of California law, and several state agencies were reported to be investigating the company. In Florida, around 2,000 complaints were filed with the then Attorney General Charlie Crist and the BBB, and an investigation was started by Assistant Attorney General Dowd. However, as the newly appointed Assistant AG McGregor was unable to find any substantial violations, so no charges were filed. Further complicating matters was the fact that the company had since declared bankruptcy, leaving no deep pockets from which to collect damages. So this would have been, yeah, Perlman. By June 2004, Fashion Rock LLC had filed a civil suit for defamation against some who had criticized Perlman's talent businesses. I love it when con men file lawsuits for defamation. It's great. The case was dismissed and closed in 2006. One of the accused, a Canadian consumer fraud expert, Les Henderson, successfully pursued a libel lawsuit against Perlman, Toner, L. Defree, and several others. Fashion Rock LLC lived on until February 2nd, 2007, when its assets were sold in Perlman's bankruptcy proceeding. DeFwy continued filing lawsuits that were all dismissed and was most recently running Expand Inc. DBA, DBA. I should know what that means. Basically operating as softrock.org, aka
Mhm.
Employer Network, from the same address as former TCT. So in 2006, investigators discovered Perlman had perpetrated what was then thought to be the longest running Ponzi scheme in American history and had defrauded investors out of more than $1 billion, out of which $300 million is actually still missing. For more than 20 years, Perlman had enticed individuals and banks to invest in Transcontinental Airlines Inc., Transcon Records, and both companies' parents, or parent company, Transcontinental International Inc. So there's all these different entities to this business, in case you're not following. Um,
Mhm.
so other companies existed only on paper, at least until Lou Pearlman's boy bands took off and Transcon Records was profiting from signed acts. After the success of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, he turned the groups and their fame into the engine that further expands his Ponzi scheme. Perlman used falsified Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, AIG, and Lloyd's of London documents to win investors' confidence in his program titled Employee Investment Saving Account or Savings Account, and he used fake financial statements created by the fictitious accounting firm Cohen and Siegel to secure bank loans. In February 2007, Florida regulators announced that Perlman's transcontinental savings program was indeed a massive fraud, and the state took possession of the company. Most of the at least $95 million which had been collected from investors was gone. Orange County Circuit Judge Renee Roche ordered Perlman and two of his associates, Robert Fischetti and Michael Crudell, to bring back to the United States any assets taken abroad which were derived from illegal transactions. Following a flight from officials, Perlman had been seen in Orlando in late January 2007 and in early February in Germany, including an appearance on German television on February 1st. So he's like run away, but he's really not like hiding either. Reportedly, he was seen in Russia, Belarus, Israel, Spain, Panama, and Brazil. In early February, an attorney in Florida received a letter from Perlman sent from Bali. Perlman was then arrested in Indonesia on June 14th, 2007, after being spotted by a tourist couple from Germany. So you don't hide, people are going to see you. Um, he was living in a tourist hotel in Nusa Dua in Bali. Perlman was indicted by a federal grand jury on June 27th, 2007. He was charged with conspiracy, money laundering, and filing false bankruptcy. So his conviction and his sentencing. So after his conviction and 5 days before his sentencing in May 2008, Perlman requested a telephone and internet connection 2 days a week to continue to promote bands. He is not for real, but he is for real. Federal Judge G. Kendall Sharp of the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida rejected that request. You don't say. On May 21st, 2008, Sharp sentenced Perlman to 25 years in prison on charges of conspiracy, money laundering, and making false statements during a bankruptcy proceeding. Perlman could reduce his prison time by 1 month for every $1 million he helped a bankruptcy trustee recover. He also ordered individual investors to be paid before institutions in distributing any eventual assets. Spoiler alert, the man was never going to be able to pay that because he didn't have any money. So anyways, Perlman and his companies were forced into involuntary bankruptcy in March 2007. Trustees and lenders intended to auction off Perlman's assets and personal belongings, including a mansion full of well-known works of art and priceless memorabilia. They quickly discovered the art and memorabilia was mostly fake. What he what could be sold was auctioned through eBay and a traditional bankruptcy auction house.
Mm.
Church Street Station, a historic train station in downtown Orlando, which Perlman had purchased in 2002, was sold at a bankruptcy auction in April 2007 for $34 million. Several of Perlman's belongings, including his college degrees, were purchased by the AV Club journalist and film critic Nathan Rabin during the eBay auction.
Mm.
In 2009, in a 2009 interview with Howard Stern, Rich Cronin, the former lead singer of LFO, because I think this is the same guy, he says unintentionally involved. If I remember correctly, in the documentary, he, which I think he was actually the creator of the documentary, he explained that, well, I was with Perlman, like in Europe
Mm.
and Asia, and I was unaware that he was a fugitive.
Mm.
I don't understand how you are unaware of that because, I mean, I don't have a lot of memory of all of this happening back then.
No.
Um, Vaguely, but not really. But it's like it was everywhere. Everyone in his life was aware that this was going on. And you really didn't know. It's weird. It's very weird that he says that. But anyways, he was with him when he was apprehended. He said that he had only received a fraction of the money owed to him from record sales. Cronin also claimed that Perlman had wanted to bang everyone. Oh my God. And had attempted to seduce him multiple times. More on that at the end. Those claims were never confirmed. Fellow LFO band member Brad Fischetti, however, continued to refer to Perlman as a friend. Okay, so I think it's actually Fischetti, not the other guy. Sorry, I'm incorrect. It's
Mm.
Fischetti. Continued to refer to Perlman as a friend and express sadness of the news of his arrest, imprisonment, and then later his death. Nick Carter, when asked if the claim was true, suggested that bitterness might be a motivating factor for the claim. In an interview conducted by the Orlando Sentinel, former NSYNC member Lance Bass, when asked about the claim, stated that Perlman had never behaved inappropriately with them.
Mm.
So in 2008, Perlman began his prison sentence with a projected release date of March 24th, 2029. However, he suffered a stroke in 2010 while incarcerated. He was diagnosed with an infection of a heart valve. Perlman had surgery to replace the heart valve a few weeks before his death. The prison took him to a hospital where he was scheduled for another surgery. Perlman died while still in custody at the Federal Correctional Institution in Miami, Florida, on August 19th, 2016. He was buried 10 days later on August 29th, 2016, in his family's burial area. He was 62 years old. So that's basically it. They kind of started to allude to it in my research. Wasn't sure they're going to touch on
Interesting.
it,
Yeah.
but there were a lot of allegations against him that were never verified, but there were allegations that he was possibly inappropriate with some of his band members and that they were also alleging that he may have been gay. Again, being gay is one thing. That's totally separate from this. If he wasn't, that's totally separate.
Mhm.
But it's the inappropriateness with young men, children, that's the issue. There was one that came out in the 2020 documentary that came out a few years ago that talked about this. It will never be discussed in the Netflix documentary, which I thought very interesting. But there was also rumors, which again, we'll never know, But there was rumors that he could have been inappropriate with Aaron Carter as well. But of course, we'll never know that. Um, and I think, unfortunately for Aaron Carter, he was very mentally ill at the end. Um, but he definitely alluded to things had happened to him. He just never named names. Um, so who
Mhm.
knows?
Mhm.
It's one of those things that it's alleged. It's not factual anyway. No one in the bands, like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, ever talked about it, or even O-Town for that matter, ever talked about anything like that. The other piece of information that I want to say, which I thought was a fun little tidbit here, is in NSYNC's second studio album, which was No Strings Attached,
Mhm.
was tribute to Lou Pearlman. The No Strings Attached was basically their way of saying there was no more strings attached to Lou Pearlman. And Bye Bye Bye, though you think that is a song about singing to a woman that's broken their heart, it's actually for him. It's actually Lou Pearlman that they were talking about, which I thought is makes me love the song even more, which I didn't even think was possible. But yeah, it's an interesting tidbits that, you never knew before. Um, but yeah,
Okay.
that's
All
it.
right. Interesting. Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So this ends episode 102 of the Next Tape podcast. The Next Tape podcast is available now on all podcast platforms. We also have a website called Tanika.
And nexttakepodcast.podpage.io.
And where else are we at?
Facebook and Instagram and Next Take Podcast and Twitter, TikTok, and Blue Sky
Hmm.
at Next Take Pod.
You can contact us in our email at mikeltanika@gmail.com. That is mikeltanika@gmail.com. So we talked about the um
Lou Pearlman,
the, yeah, the unknown six member slash manager of the Backstreet Boys.
NSYNC, O-Town, and many others.
Yeah. So I guess he wanted to be the superstar front page.
No, he just wanted the money. That's all it was about. It
Oh, okay.
wasn't about that. It's about the money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was about the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We had a lot of there's been probably a lot of groups, boy bands that have that type of troubles um in their careers. And some of them, basically, break up with either, criminal or money issues or management issues or uh personal issues. So yeah, so stuff like this does happen when you are in a group.
Not even
So
just a group. It's stuff like that happens with solo artists as well.
yeah,
The music industry is, well, really any industry, music or film, is very, um, can be very underhanded.
right.
So, yeah.
Okay. So anything else you want to say? Or that's basically it for now.
No, I think that's it.
All right. So I'm Mikal, and
And I'm Jacob.
we're out until
Next week, most likely.
all right. Cool, cool. Next week. Peace, guys.
Bye.